Hi, everybody. I'm Jennifer J. Raffloer, and today I am here with Danielle Kitzes. Hi, Danielle.
Hey there, how are you?
I'm awesome. I'm so excited to be here with you. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well, doing really, really well. It was a good
Awesome.
start to the morning. Yeah,
With your children this morning?
I got them up at 6:30 and just said, we can't be late today, guys. We got to keep going.
Yeah.
So it was nice. It was actually pretty well managed with the time. My oldest made her own snack, which for a 5-year-old is pretty big.
That's huge.
Um,
That's huge.
it's huge. And she was so proud. She said, I'm going to tell my teachers that I made my snack and most of my lunch. And I said, okay, baby, you do it. So
Yeah.
it set a very nice tone for the morning.
Awesome. Well, I'm super happy to have you here, and I'm glad they got off to school, without
Yes.
any problems.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for showing up. I'm like so excited about this interview because, you do things that I've been interested in for such a long time. So let's get into that. I'm going to read your
Okay.
bio so our viewers know a little bit about you, and I guess I'll just read it.
Perfect.
Danielle Kitzes is a medical intuitive healer, Reiki master teacher, oracle card reader, and medium who utilizes a whole, istic approach to achieving mind, body, and spirit balance and alignment. Through practicing and teaching about a variety of tools and modalities, Danielle customizes each healing or Reiki teaching session and acts as a guide on how to heal oneself in order to finally live a life with clarity, purpose, and a handy toolbox for all of life's adventures. Prior to following her calling in spiritual healing, she worked for nearly 15 years in escrow, both as a small business owner and under the corporate framework. Currently, she resides in Chatsworth, California, with her husband, 2 daughters, and 2 dogs, and practices in-person and distance sessions from her home office. You may contact Danielle via email at danielle@divineradiantliving.com or through her website, www.divineradiantliving.com. You can also follow her musings on Instagram or Facebook under the handle Divine Radiant Living. Yay! So, Danielle, what
Yes.
exactly do you do? I mean, we mentioned intuitive and medium,
Yes.
Reiki teacher, and
Yes.
you've told me offline that you don't consider yourself psychic, but you say you have psychic tendencies. So
Yes.
I was wondering if you could tell our viewers what it means to you to be an intuitive versus a medium versus a psychic.
Okay. So an intuitive is someone who's just dialed in at that frequency where you are more connected, I would say, to other energies, people, situations, and you have this innate wisdom, right? This innate intelligence. Everyone has it,
Okay.
but more people are now starting to get dialed in like, oh, that little gut feeling was right. So
Mm-hmm.
intuitive is someone who just operates, I would say, at that level and at that frequency a lot more and more often than other people.
Okay.
So, and we talked about this offline, like when you get messages, right? We met messages from spirit, from God, from source, and trusting that message that it's going to lead you on the right path. So intuitive is that person who just has that trust and
Okay.
that faith, that feeling, that thought, that maybe taste, the sound, hearing, whatever it is that you operate within your intuition, you trust that message. The medium, on the other hand, is someone who is connected to the other side. So you have you and I, right? We have functioning organs and skin and a skeletal system. And in this realm, but there is a whole other realm of just the energy of other spirits, other souls. And so the medium can connect within that energy realm, people
Okay.
that have passed on. And then a psychic to me is someone, I mean, I'm blown away by psychics personally. They can see into the future. They can see things that have not occurred and they can share with you. And when I meet really powerful psychics, at first I always doubt, like, no, maybe that's not going to happen. And then something happens within 2 to 3 days. And I think, oh yeah, they were right. Okay. All right. They're good. They're good. So when I have psychic tendencies, there are times that I can see something, but it's not like an everyday occurrence. It's not in every single session that I'm telling people, oh, do this, 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 and this, or this person's coming through, or this, job is coming through. It's more of a very, when it happens, it happens.
Okay.
And yeah, whereas other psychics, like, they know, like, this, they're so 100% confident this is what's going to happen to you. And mine is more of, this is what I'm sensing, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'm intuiting.
Yeah.
And if you go along this path, these are some ways that you can create this reality, but it's not like 100% certainty, do this and that happens, right?
Gotcha.
Whereas a psychic is more, this is what it is, this is what's coming to you, be careful about this person, or however they phrase it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So before we started recording, you and I spoke a little bit, and I said to you, if anything comes through, psychically, intuitively, that you have permission to share it,
Okay.
whether it's about myself or about somebody that's watching our interview.
Yeah, I think a lot of times the messages come through as we're talking, and we talked about that when you're channeling, you don't always know why you're saying something.
Yeah.
It just comes out. And so I've just learned to just let it go. Just keep talking. Just keep saying whatever it is, because there's a reason why it needs to be said. And I may not understand that reason. It may not be meant for me to be understood. It's for you or someone else. Okay. And they'll go, oh, okay, that message was for me. I get it.
That was for me. So not necessarily so-and-so, listen up, here's your message.
Yeah.
The message is contained within our conversation.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's really, I think sometimes as a way of really affirming and confirming for people certain things that they're going through in their life. And they're like, oh, someone else told me that same thing 2 days ago. And then they put together like, oh, okay, maybe this is a message I'm supposed to pay attention to, right? Yes. Something's going on in your life and you hear something, it's like a bell that goes off and triggers this reaction to, oh, I need to pay attention to that. Okay, that was some golden nugget of wisdom that I need to apply in my life.
Yes. Yeah. And if you hear it twice or 3 times, there are no coincidences. So yes, it was for you.
Right. I call them God incidences. Someone else had, I think, coined it that I met, and I loved it. And I'm like, yep, they're God incidences. They're not coincidences. They're God incidences.
I love that.
Right. And it's just that moment where you realize there's a purpose. There's some sort of magic and goodness in our life. And it's not just random chance or luck.
Yes, I agree. Yep. So I know that you're also a medical intuitive. So what's the difference between an intuitive and a medical intuitive? And how does somebody become a medical intuitive?
So with the medical intuitive, mine is more, and since I was a kid, I had this where I would sense something physically wrong with the person. Mm-hmm. But I didn't always have the language to describe. I just knew there was something wrong, right? Like something that there's just something wasn't right, and it had to do with their health. And my mom, I don't even think she realized at the time that she had this. She would tell me, if you smell certain things, or if you see certain things on the person, like the way their skin is or different discoloration, this is what it means. Mm-hmm. So I started learning the words to make sense of what was going on. So the medical intuitive can look at a person, scan the body, scan the aura. Each person's a little different with how they feel things, right? Some people might literally hear a message, just have a feeling about it, just a knowing. I will smell certain things. So I've told certain people in my life, like, you have an infection, I smell it on you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And obviously this is like really close people. I don't just go up to random strangers and do that. Sometimes it's like, how else? Like it's usually just a knowing. And so I'll scan the body. Okay. And I can, see, let's say within the stomach, I might see some sludginess, or I might see where it feels or looks inflamed. I might look at the person on their neck and see their thyroid and be like, okay, there's something out of balance here. Or I might check in and look and see with, like, it's like almost like looking at a movie of what blood looks like, right? With the platelets and the cells and just seeing different things. And another part of it is just looking at someone, just having this knowing, oh, liver, kidney. And so the medical intuitive is just more dialed in to your medical health system.
Okay.
Intuitive can tell you anything about your life. It's like this big umbrella. And then you have within it the medical intuitive. So I do believe that a great deal of our nurses, doctors, and within the healthcare system, they have some component of this that they're drawn to, and some really dial in, like Tina Zion, if I recall correctly. She's a medical intuitive. She was a nurse, or she still is a nurse.
Oh, wow.
And so she has this whole book on how to be a medical intuitive. And a big part of that is getting to know yourself, getting to know and trust what's going on in your body. Because if you're ignoring your messages, then even if you sense something with someone else, you don't have enough practice and self-confidence to say, oh, that's what that is, right?
Okay.
So for me, you know, I had a mentor. I still have my mentor, Becky. She's amazing. And Becky Hernandez. And so she helped me, really what she was helping me do is just trust. I think a big part of that is this trust and knowing that if you get a message, there's a reason for it. If you have a feeling, write it down. What's that feeling? Question it, right? You can also do meditations where you start, you know, seated, feet firmly planted on the ground, relax, some deep breaths to really get like even your heart rate to slow down. And then what you do is you just start, like, close your eyes and you focus on your feet. Focus on your toes, wiggling your toes. How do my toes feel? How does my feet, how do my ankles, my shins, my calves? And you work your way up, but you do it slowly to really examine, what do I feel? Do I feel tension? Is this part relaxed? And the more you do that, the more it's like you're telling your body, I want to hear what you have to tell me.
Okay.
Right? And so the more practice, all of a sudden, immediately you'll feel like a little pinched nerve in your back. Go, oh, there's something going on there. Okay, what's going on there? What just happened before I started feeling that pinched nerve? And you can start examining, oh, maybe my trigger was something emotional. Maybe it was something physical. Maybe it was something somebody said, I didn't express it, and now all of a sudden my throat's hurting, my back's hurting, right? And so the more you practice it, the more you become aware. Then when you work with people and you get permission, that's the big part. I learned that one really quickly.
Okay.
That you have to ask for permission. It's not just like, I'm going to look at you and start scanning you and telling you things. No, you need consent. And when you do that, then you can scan a person, and the more intuitive you are, you can feel, right? Okay, you're feeling kind of sad to me. Why do you feel sad? And you can scan the body, same like you do with yourself. And like, okay, let's start from the head. Let's work our way down. And so it's just a kind of ongoing practice, right? It's like learning how to write. When you first start learning how to write or learning a language, it's not very great.
Okay.
But the more you practice it, the more you start trusting, oh, I know how to write this letter. I know how to acknowledge, you know, right? And then it becomes like a whole other language for you to communicate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So I have two questions.
Yes.
With the medical intuitive, there's like this active process and this inactive process. The active process would be scanning. And then the inactive would be your typical intuitive or mediumistic events. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, because you can have, like, where the medium part can come in is sometimes what I call my guides or other people's guides, or I have a guide who is a deceased relative, and she is one of my medical intuitive guides. So either she'll come through, or another medical intuitive guide would come through, or a deceased relative from the person I'm working with might come through off to the side. For me, it's on my left side. And they might tell me things like, hey, ask her what's going on with this. Or they might show me pictures or like a video reel or words to help me then ask, okay, what's going on here?
Okay.
Yeah. And that's more of the inactive part, where it's more of the spirit, the guidance from the outside. Outside, so to speak, versus me looking in and scanning and seeing what's going on.
Okay. Do you feel any guides present with you right now?
Yeah, I almost always have them in the room.
Okay.
And yeah, so I always feel like, I don't know how to explain it, but they're always like around my back. When I have my guides, they're off to the side and around my back. Like if you were to imagine, if you look at a picture of Archangel Michael, right, like these huge wings,
Yes.
that's what it feels like they're around me as my protection, as my wings.
Wow.
And so when I dial into them, then they'll start chiming in.
Okay.
And sometimes, honestly, I don't even recognize because I'm just so used to just going about that. Then when I take a moment, I'm like, oh, okay, I feel it. And it's like a nice warm feeling.
Oh, like a nice little hug maybe?
Yeah, like a hug. Yeah.
Okay, beautiful.
So,
So back to the body scan. How do you do that? Are you doing, as you described when you said somebody gets quiet and they focus on their toes and they move up very slowly, focusing on every little piece of their body, or do you do something different?
that's pretty much it. You know, I don't have my eyes closed because I usually have the person in front of me unless I'm doing a distance where I'm in like a meditation.
Okay.
If I'm doing a distance where it's like a Zoom, like this, or a Skype, then when they're face to face, I just literally, you know, I say my prayers. I have prayers that I say to protect me and to help guide me, that I speak in my highest self for the highest self of others, right? And so what I do is I go from the crown down. And I just kind of do a scan and just see, okay, how am I feeling? Does anything jump out at me? And that's where sometimes, like I said, like the thyroid might come out, or the stomach, and then I might focus and I'm, oh, okay, I see like a little bit of this, or the heart area, or the lungs, or what has happened in my evolution now is I start feeling what the person is going through.
Okay.
And you know, there was one specific that I remember that this woman booked on a Friday afternoon for an early Saturday morning. And all of a sudden I started coughing and having like bronchitis symptoms. My asthma flared up, all these issues out of nowhere. And sure enough, this person in the family had been dealing with pneumonia.
Oh.
And I was like, because I specifically asked, what's going on with the lungs? This is what's been happening to me.
Yeah.
And as soon as we talked about it, it like cleared, right? Or as soon as I was done with that session, it cleared. Now, what I've noticed too is when it doesn't clear, it's a message for me, hey, you haven't been paying attention to this area of yourself. Figure out what's going on there, or go to a doctor and see what's going on there. I'm not like totally opposed to Western medicine because there's lots of engineering and technology within that field that can be really helpful if you bridge the intuitive side with some of that science too. It's really, really nice. Yeah.
I agree with that. Yes.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you started feeling, so that's empathic.
Yes.
So would you consider yourself an empath?
I do. I remember growing up, I don't know how, if it was I said it to my mom or my mom said it to me, but I think my mom said it to me, she realized, she's like, you're like a sponge. You feel, you soak in everything from everybody.
Yeah.
And that's what she was like, oh, you're like a sponge. We didn't have that word empath. I didn't learn that word till my 30s. So I just knew it like, oh, I'm just like a sponge. I'm just really sensitive. I'm like a sponge. And so, yes, that definitely is a component of it, because you can intuit, you just sense, you just feel what that other person is feeling, either emotionally or even physically, right? And each empath has their own way of describing it. So for some, maybe they do hear something, maybe they do sense something, maybe they have a certain taste in their mouth and they know, oh, something's happening here.
Okay.
It just depends. Yeah.
Okay. So what are ways that our viewers could learn to become more intuitive, or maybe even become a medical intuitive?
So I think a big part of that is trusting yourself and practicing. And it could be something as simple as your phone rings and before you look at it, who do you think is calling?
Okay.
Right? What if you're thinking about someone and they call you? Right? That's like a sense of it, like, oh, so you had a sense there was something there. So a big part of that is, again, the practice. It's the trust. And that I think, honestly, is the biggest hurdle. Because I went through that, and I still go through that every once in a while, where I doubt and not being afraid. I think sometimes people are afraid to deal with this whole realm. I used to be afraid of the whole medium side, and now, since I've embraced it, there's no fear whatsoever.
Okay.
For those that are really, really interested, I do think prayer and some sense of a higher order is almost necessary, because it's more than you. Like, it's bigger than us.
Yes.
Whether you think it's just collective energy, like quantum physics,
Mm-hmm.
this greater energy, or whether you believe it's God and a higher power and angels and archangels, there has to be some sort of belief system, because that usually is what helps you with prayers. You know, like, please help me right now. It's a big one, is recognizing that if it's bigger than us, and you ask for prayer, you're asking for help. You're asking for source, spirit, your own guides to come
Mm-hmm.
through and help you feel more about yourself or feel more about someone. I'm a big proponent on books. I love learning.
Mm-hmm.
So I love Carolyn Mace. She's phenomenal. I actually saw her for a medical and spiritual intuitive conference last year in San Diego, and it was mind-blowing. It was
Really?
Yes. And more than anything, what it did was trigger this, again, the language, things that I've been feeling inside, which is that our physical ailments are often connected with a spiritual side to it.
Okay.
That we forget about, or that we choose to push aside and ignore, because we're taught to kind of like keep on, keep going, keep going.
Yeah.
So reading lots of books and learning from other people around you that are in the field, Tina Zion, Carolyn Mace, those are the two big ones that I like reading up on. I love reading up on the medical stuff. I like the NHI, the government website, on the different studies that are out there and what they're seeing, but then also looking up medical systems, looking up Ayurvedic systems, Chinese medicine systems, the American or Western medicine, because again, it gives you names for things. So if I see something like there's this area, what looks like behind here, as opposed to there's this area behind your kidney and I'm seeing this here and it feels like there's a lump there, maybe you should go get that checked out, right?
Yeah.
So the more language, the more education you have, when you feel certain things, you can then say, oh, that's the liver, that's the kidney.
Okay.
Or you can feel if there's an imbalance in the vitamins and in the minerals, okay, this person needs more vitamin K, more calcium, or whatever it is. Or you can say, go to the doctor, have your labs done, but if you can, have it read by a functional doctor or an integrative medical doctor, because they look at things specific to you and not just the blanket ranges. You know, if you fall within that range, you're fine. But for you,
only if you're in that range,
right? As opposed to maybe for you, you should be more close to that side. And then when you're over here, there's something thrown off balance.
Yeah.
So really it's just trusting yourself. It's practicing, and it's learning as much as you can from other people and seeing what resonates, what doesn't.
Okay.
Because if something doesn't resonate with you, that's okay. Right.
Trust it. There's a reason why it doesn't resonate with you.
Yeah. And the other thing too is be open to making mistakes and being wrong. That was a big thing that Becky and I would talk about. Like, I just don't want to be wrong. What if I do something wrong to this person? What if it's a mistake? And she's like, okay. Right. And there's something about that, not trying to be perfect, that you might be wrong. Maybe you said the wrong word. Maybe, okay, that wasn't right. Doctors have been known to be wrong too. No one's perfect.
Yeah.
And so if you're open to imperfection, it frees you up and liberates you from feeling like you have to get everything right. And okay, you know, it sets a very more relaxed tone for how things can go about.
Everything is okay.
Everything is okay. But definitely reading audiobooks, You know, you can go for free on your local public libraries. Oftentimes they'll have apps, or there are third-party apps that can let you read books or audiobook or listen to audiobooks for free. So that once I learned that, I was like, oh, this is like game changer. I'm not spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars on books.
Yeah.
Which, not that there's a problem with that either. You know, you want to support your authors as well. But depending on where people are at, just read from the library and go from there. Yeah.
Okay. So you were talking about the phones ringing and all right, who's calling me? So you're like, okay, that's Mary, right? And then you go look and you answer the phone, it's Mary. Now, were you psychic?
You know, I think it's again, it's being dialed in. Like when you're super relaxed, when, you know, as someone who has dealt with very bad anxiety, like I've called it crippling anxiety in my past.
Okay.
When you can center yourself and lower your energy, not your energy, but lower any stressors, lower any inflammation, if you will, and you can just be in stillness and in this open space, you allow things to come into that open space. If your mind is full of constant chatter, those messages aren't going to be able to get through.
Okay.
So part of that is intuition. A part of that is even the psychic stuff that, it's a psychic tendency.
There we go.
It's the two of you being on the same wavelength and being open and receptive to follow through. Like, oh, I think that's Mary. Why? Just is, you know?
Fair enough. Okay. So could we talk about the chakras?
Yes. I actually pulled up my notes too. So I have them on, I have them on a second computer. And I love the chakras just because it's such a fascinating topic. It's a fascinating topic. And I love how it's described by different people. Some people will say they're I call them energy centers. Okay. Some people say they're like vortexes of energy. It's just however the person chooses to describe it, how it appeals to them, how they view the chakras, like either literally viewing it or just how they sense it. Okay.
So how are our chakras related to physical manifestation of illness or dis-ease?
Yes. So each chakra has you have the crown chakra. That's your connection to the divine. You have your third eye. And I think the third eye for me is being able to see your truth, being able to see things for exactly how they are, right? But also a connection between the divine and knowing what's reality versus what's a fantasy. And you have your throat chakra, which is how you communicate. I also look at it as the bridge between your head, the chakras up here, and the chakras below. So above the head, it's more of this ethereal, spiritual, universal connection. And then below the neck, right, you have quite literally your physical body. You know, you have your heart, your lungs, you've got your stomach, in the sacral area, you have your sex organs, you have your root, the base of the spine, you have your feet, your hands. And so each one has their own thing. So with your throat, it could be a lot of things. Maybe you're talking too much, right? Like diarrhea of the mouth. Maybe you're not talking, right? You're just saying things willy-nilly without really having an intention or focus or purpose to saying it. Maybe you're not saying enough. And so I notice for me, when I'm not talking enough about either my heart center, like maybe I'm not speaking authentically, maybe not speaking from my heart, speaking with that connection or connection to my reality. If I'm not speaking the truth, if I'm, how it connects, I start to notice certain issues in my throat. And then whatever it is, the more I'm like, oh, I'm just going to speak how I feel like speaking. Obviously not being rude or disrespectful, because that doesn't serve a purpose. Sure. And all of a sudden it starts to clear up. You have your heart chakra, and the heart chakra, it's your heart, but it's also your lung area. It's also your lung area. You have your solar plexus right below. And if you believe in the colors of the chakra, I know that was something that I read somewhere recently that the chakras didn't have colors. There were no colors. That was recently done in this last century, or no,
Oh,
last millennia, that they had it, that
and
someone had created the colors, right? So you have the violet, the purple, blue, green for your heart, yellow for your solar plexus, orange for your sacral, red for your root. And it was, for me, I look at it as another way for us to discern what's going on, right?
okay.
And as a medical intuitive, if I start seeing lots of red in the sacral area, I'm like, okay, there's something going on there. Let me go there, right? Or if I see the heart area feels black with just a little speck of green, okay, this person needs to open their heart. What's going on there,
Okay.
right? Do they have a heavy chest? Are they not doing enough deep breaths? Is there something going on with their lungs? Your gut, people say, oh, I trust my gut. Well, that's your stomach area. That's your solar plexus.
Mm-hmm.
And your solar plexus is all about your confidence, right? If you're confident, you trust yourself. So it makes sense then when you think about trust your gut, because that's you. That's a part of you. That's what gives you this like ability to manifest and create your passion, which comes from your sex organs. If you think about desire, right? And then you have your root, which is your grounding, your stable. And what I found is when people are feeling lost, confused, disconnected, that's a part of the root chakra, right? There's something going on there. And it could literally be, maybe they have a tailbone issue, but there's also, right, different layers to that.
Okay.
Or maybe people are feeling disconnected, and that deals with a deeper issue from childhood about how they felt disconnected from their own family. Because the first 3 chakras, your root, sacral, and solar plexus, are very much tribal based. They're very much like that primordial brain area.
Reptilian brain?
Yes, your reptilian brain.
Okay.
Right? So think of your chakras like from the bottom up. You're working from your very primal instincts, fight, flight, freeze, your basic need. What are your basic needs? You want food, shelter, and a tribe, right? That's what kept you alive for thousands of years.
Okay.
So, you have that. And then as you work your way up, you're dealing with less of the tribal stuff and more of higher vibration energy. You're opening up to different levels until you get to the top, right? Like the penthouse, if you will. And that's your crown chakra, because the penthouse, it's just beautiful. So Carolyn Mace, she did this incredible description. I'm going to brief it for you in less than a minute. But what she talked about is, imagine yourself in New York City and you're standing on the ground floor. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you smell? Maybe someone pushes you because you're in your, it's very kind of grimy. It's just your instincts. I gotta eat. I gotta work. I gotta do this. And so you live, let's say, on the ground level of this building in New York, right? And you only see things from your level. You can only see this. You might be able to look up and, oh, okay, I see the clouds. I see the sun, whatever, but you keep going. And as you live in a level, 2nd floor, 3rd floor, 4th floor, all of a sudden, oh, I don't hear as much of the honking and the slurs. Oh, it doesn't smell like summer New York has a very distinct smell. Oh, I can't really smell that as much, right? And, oh, look at that view. All of a sudden, instead of just being able to see things from your ground view, you can see things higher up and you see further out into the city. Maybe you can see 3 blocks down that way. And so you have a different perspective. You have more awareness, more open connection to something just outside of your little bubble. And the goal, though, is you get to the penthouse. And what you see from the penthouse, all of a sudden, you see the entire island. You can see the river. And you can tell people, oh, my God, I can see this incredible sunset. The person on the 1st floor can't see that sunset.
No.
Right? So the goal is to look at your chakras as a way of saying, okay, am I balanced? If you have a horrible foundation of a building, it doesn't matter if you're on the penthouse. It's going to come, crashing down at some point. So you build the energetic connection, the physical connection, like, do I have food? Do I have a job, right? If you don't have food, if you don't have shelter, if you don't have a job, if you don't have connection, well, you as a person are going to have a really hard time Oftentimes, there are exceptions, believing in a God, believing in yourself, trusting that there is a greater order and there's a whole bigger purpose, right?
Yeah.
So part of connecting with your the physical characteristics within the chakras is understanding that when you're taking care of these physical needs, you are opening yourself up to being in balance and connecting again with your spiritual needs. It's just this complete alignment across the layers. Right? It's not just spiritual. It's not just mental or emotional. It's also physical.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's just that, it's looking at the different areas and these energy centers representing certain parts within our body. So if you feel something within your heart, it's okay. Is this my heart? What else is around my heart? Is it my rib cage? Is it my lungs? How am I breathing right now? Right? If you're feeling stressed and worried and anxious, you're not breathing right. And if you're not breathing right, you're not getting enough oxygen to your brain, right? So there's also this physiological aspect to the chakras, to these energy centers that we have, and the spiritual aspect of it.
Okay. How do you feel? Do you feel like all your chakras are pretty much in alignment and clear?
I feel pretty good, but I know that there are areas that need to be worked on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I know that just, what's funny though is a part of that was like the throat area, right? So if you want to think of like the communication, but it's also how are you communicating with yourself, like self-love.
Okay.
And I've recently dabbled with a little bit more dairy than I should. So for me, I get an actual physiological manifestation of what's called tonsil stones.
Oh.
And I every time that I have dairy and the following morning I wake up and I'm like, okay. Yeah. And so, part of that is, again, I'm human. And so,
yeah.
Right. And it's giving yourself grace that, you're sometimes not going to be 100% perfect with yourself, whether you're an intuitive or not.
Yeah. You're human.
You're human. Right. But then I always check in like, okay, what was going on? Okay. For me, dairy reflects or symbolizes comfort food. Right.
Yeah.
From my childhood, I loved dairy, but it's also then, okay, is there something more? Do I need more calcium? So it's something that I check in with myself. So overall I feel fine, but yes, there are certain areas I know I'm like, okay, I need to do some Reiki, do some journaling and or channel writing and figuring out what's going on there and what do I need to do? What are my next steps? Because I'm not going to ignore it and push it away. Sure. Because when you do that, it gets louder and louder and you have more physical manifestation. So you're like, okay, I will listen to you finally.
I have no choice but to listen.
I have no choice. I'm being wheeled into the ER. I gotta listen. So overall though, I feel pretty good. Yeah. One of the things that comes up a lot with almost every single person that comes to me, there's some sort of childhood drama or trauma.
Okay.
And, as kids, we're not often given the tools to help us sort through and process through the actual situation or our emotions. We're not always given the language for it. And so it's just stuck there. And that often turns into a root chakra area.
Okay.
Right? A lot of our childhood is our tribe. This is our tribe. This is our foundation. This is where we get a sense of the world. And so when we have a sense of a world like through a divorce or a death, where it's very rocky, it creates certain issues there. And it can manifest into adulthood. It can manifest in different ways. It can start to spill into other chakra areas, right? Like your passion center, your creation center, your solar plexus, your heart center, your communication, because maybe you were told, don't cry. Someone really big died in your family that had a huge impact and no one talked to you about it. You were told not to cry and a part of your heart closed off because you started feeling, well, I can't open myself up and love someone that much because if they leave, then I can't express it, right? So it can manifest in different ways. And that's the spiritual side. The spiritual side is, not necessarily the holes in the soul, because I don't believe that for this, but just this idea of these imbalances, these like dark little pockets.
Okay.
that need to be filled in with the tools to help you work through those childhood issues or even adulthood traumas, work through them, heal them, so that when things start to get rocky again in our lives, because nothing's perfect, right? We're going to go through ebbs and flows in our life. We know then how to bring it back to a balanced state. The goal is always to be balanced and aligned. And what that looks like for me is going to look very different for you. Because we come from different spiritual backgrounds or how we grew up, what we believe. And so trying to get back into alignment, understanding the things from our past, the thoughts that we've been told to say to ourselves, cultural aspect, how that can affect the chakras and manifest later in physical areas. Okay. To get you to work on it.
Wake you up.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, some of us are quite resistant to waking up. I know that recently you've had some experiences with a chiropractor, and there's a map of the spine, and somehow you were able to work that into what you do and better diagnose people or assess what's going on with them.
Right.
Could you talk about that spine map a little bit and explain what it is?
Yeah. So I'm not a doctor. I'm not a chiropractor, and I'm going to try not to butcher this.
Okay.
I originally went to her because my hip was off. Now I'm still breastfeeding. And so your hormones also play a part, right? In your ligaments and your joints. And she showed me, it's this chart that goes, different nerve levels, C1, C2, C3, C4, C5, C6, C7, then you get to the T's, T1 through T12. You have your lumbar area, L1 through L5, and then you have S1, which is your tailbone right at the bottom.
Okay.
And so what's fascinating is, and it's like a duh moment, like an aha moment, but your brain speaks to the rest of your body, right? Through nerves, through nerve endings, through blood, through your ability to communicate through your spine into these other areas. Your spine helps communicate with your extremities, your organs, to make sure everything's properly functioning.
Okay.
So imagine if you have an issue in T10, for example, that's, around the middle to lower, like towards the beginning of your lower back, you're going to have issues with your small intestines, appendix, the testes, ovaries, large intestines. Now that tells me, okay, that area is between the solar plexus and your sacral, right? Because your solar plexus tends to deal with the stomach. Your sacral tends to deal with your sex organs. And so it's fascinating because then, she has this area, common symptoms, digestive complaints within 1 to 2 hours after eating. Now, this is a chart that it's called the Hoffman chart. So the Hoffman chart, and it's based upon years of actual chiropractic clinical experience. And so the disclaimer is the list above is only a partial list. The spinal cord is made up of millions of nerves that branch off and blanket the entire body. Therefore, only the major connections between the brain and the body have been listed. So what was amazing in going to her, because I've never had a chiropractor do this. In fact, there was a point where I was like, I don't believe in chiropractors. I just don't believe in them. Yeah, because the one I saw, I almost felt like it was just about the money.
Oh, no.
Right? And so you start, and I thought, well, I don't necessarily feel 100% better. But the one I see, her name is Dr. Andrea, and she's based nearby in Calabasas.
Okay.
What was phenomenal is she looks at the medical. She looks and she hears your complaints and says, okay, well, I think it's around this area. But then she does a thermal scan. And she does a thermal scan from the top of your neck all the way down to see what's the heat. And she says, if it's above a certain temperature, there's something going on there. Wow. And she knows those are the areas to work. So for example, like if you're having headache, migraines, earaches, colds, flu, sore throat, often you may want to look at the C1, which deals with your head, face, brain, pituitary gland, eyes, and ears, right? And, you know, the story that I gave, and I actually did a testimonial for her on this, I'd been having 3 to 4 days of just insane asthma, taking my inhaler every single hour. This was, I believe, back in December. And, you know, the holiday season, things can be a lot of fun. And there were lots of things that I wasn't taking care of myself in the way I should have. So my lungs were telling me it's time to take care of this.
Yeah.
And I went to see her and she said, you know what? Let me work on this area of your back. And she was able to do the adjustment on that area of the back. And I just went immediately, whoa. And she said, what? And I was like, it literally felt like my lungs had expanded.
Wow.
And it was like I heard it. It was not like a pop, but it was just like this. And she said, are you serious? I said, yeah. And I didn't need my inhaler.
Amazing.
So, you know, there is this brain-body connection, right? And so if your spine is not in alignment, if your spine is not functioning properly, the idea behind it then is that certain organs, certain areas of your body may not function properly because it's not communicating with your brain and letting you know, hey, this part's really bothering me. Or maybe it's over communicating, say, hey, there's something going on. You need to pay attention to me right now.
Yeah.
So it's been this, again, like the constant learning, because then it gives these aha moments of, oh, okay. So there have been times, even when I have people on my massage table where I do Reiki, I'll tell them, I see them literally off balance. Like you can see the leg off balance, the foot, you know, I'm like, go see a chiropractor, because I can give them other, other suggestions and recommendations. But if your body is not functioning at its optimal range, then anything else I tell you is not really going to give you the benefit that you want. It might help a little bit, but with some of that extra medical help with the chiropractor or seeing a specialist, then when you put everything together, you can feel better. Right? And that's the goal. And then hopefully when people start to feel those sensations, so if your liver is hurting you, okay, that's somewhere between the T5 and the T8. Okay. So should I go to a chiropractor and have them adjust that area, right? Maybe the scan shows up and you seem fine, or maybe it's I drank too much. But it doesn't hurt, right? Or maybe you ate something too fatty, too greasy, but it doesn't hurt to have a medical team that can look at you, not just from your spiritual side, your mental, emotional side, not just the physical, but then look at you from your spine and see, okay, which areas are not communicating? What can I do here? Okay. Because what she talks about, it's called subluxation. And she talks about how, you know, when something's thrown off, it could be through stress, right? It's not just you get into a car accident. It's your day-to-day thing. As a mom carrying a 1-year-old on my left hip, it makes sense. I'm going to be a little off because I'm almost always walking like that, right? Yeah. And so seeing someone who can help kind of put you back into alignment, it doesn't hurt. And I like to connect that to when you're, you know, if you do yoga or if you do meditation, right, you're supposed to sit upright with your, you know, tailbone kind of like tucked in, like you're not, it's a certain way of sitting, because the idea is that you're a clear channel of energy. And so you have that from the spiritual aspect of you being this clear channel with your posture, to also the physical level of being a clear channel of brain-body communication, so you're functioning at a more optimal level. Okay. Yeah.
So I have a really big, bad question for you.
Yes.
So if somebody has scoliosis and their back looks like an S, or their spine looks like an S, how can they be a clear channel? Is there an etheric spine that is there that will support that person?
Yes, I think there's an etheric spine. I also feel like there was this, oh gosh, I can't remember her name now, but it was all over like Facebook and like one of those like little videos that they send. And it was this woman who had scoliosis and kyphosis, which is that hump, right?
Yep.
and she was completely hunched over. And through yoga and physical therapy, she was able over time to eventually get to a point where she was almost 100% like perfect with her spine.
Really?
And so I think it's not just about the ethereal energy. It's also about, are there ways that I can help myself work with this curvature, right? Is there a way that I can make it tweak a little bit? For the extreme cases where you can't without surgery, or you just can't even with surgery, then it's, okay, what can I do to help myself compensate? What can I do to override this going on?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's being more mindful if there's certain areas that are not balanced in the spine. Know, okay, what are the physical symptoms that can manifest? What are the areas that this can affect me? And what are the other things that I can do to help support this area that may not be as strong as other areas of my spine, right? Because if you've tried things and it's not working to make that perfect spine, which not everybody has, then it's, okay, what can I do to help work with what I have, right? And that's in general in our life. What can we do to work with ourselves, with our brain and our body that we were born with, that we have, to keep succeeding and keep moving forward in our life?
Okay. Do you ever pick up that any of these dis-eases that have manifested physically are the result of past life trauma?
Yes.
You do?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm like drawing a blank on the specific, but I remember it was like related to the maternal lineage, the matrilineal.
Okay.
And you know, there's this idea that when we heal ourselves as women, right, that we are healing our past. And there is this karmic energetic thing. And it was this beautiful, beautiful quote, and I'm butchering it, I'm sure. So I'm going to try to,
Okay.
but
No
essentially
worries.
that when our grandmothers were pregnant with our mothers had all the eggs within their body that would end up becoming us.
Yeah.
Right. And so I thought about that. And I thought, well, what was your grandmother's life like? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you think about it on an energetic aspect, what if she had horrible, horrible, horrible nutrition?
Yeah.
Right. That affected the DNA of your mother, which then in turn could affect you. So you could look at it from a scientific aspect, but you could also look at it from an energetic and spiritual aspect. What if you had a grandmother that went through a really terrible pregnancy, that was maybe abused and not supported by her spouse or partner or by her family? Think of that feeling that goes into your child. And there's now scientific studies that show how we are in our pregnancies can actually affect our children, right? We know that from a nutritional basis.
Yeah, we do.
We know that from mothers who binge drink or have drug addictions, right?
Yeah.
And so if you take it a step further, look at it energetically. So it makes sense that we can have residual traces of things that we don't quite understand, because you can't understand. It was just something that happened 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago. So the idea then is, when you work on healing yourself, you're healing that past so that when you get pregnant, it doesn't go through. But at the same time, if you already have kids, I think, again, it's this energetic thing, that energetically you can teach your children, giving them the tools and resources to help them deal with these repetitious patterns that could keep coming through, so that they can heal themselves for future generations.
Gotcha.
And I know there was a study too about how men who smoked cigarettes affected their DNA. So if you look at the DNA, like in the sperm, pre-smoking to then smoking, and then continually smoking, there were changes. But then there's this idea then that if they got healthy, they could change it back to looking a different way. So I like that, because there's a fluidity and not feeling like we're always going to be stuck with this. There's this idea that we are always evolving and transforming.
Okay.
And that applies also to the past and the future.
Okay. So
Yeah.
There is hope. You're never
There's
stuck.
always hope.
Nothing's written in stone.
Nothing's written. And a big part of the hope is the big part of transformation and change, it's your outlook. It's your mental health. It's how do you feel? Do you feel you can heal yourself, right? If you can't, if you feel like I'm never going to get better, guess what?
You're not.
You're probably not going to get better. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Great point. I have a question that I have to bring up because I'm notorious for my pro-truth ex-vaccine posts on Facebook. How do you feel about vaccines? As an empath, as an intuitive, as a channel, as having these psychic tendencies, how do you view vaccines?
It's really hard. It's complicated. Okay. It's, because I grew up very pro-vaccine. And what I tell people is just like any medication, just because it worked 40, 50 years ago and helped at that time, doesn't mean it's helping us now in the way it should. That's one. What bothers me is that it seems like there are lots of vaccines that have not been reformulated, if that makes sense. Like it's the same exact ingredients, the same this. Well, how do we know that that's really what's going to work right now? Mm-hmm. I think, there are issues. There's a reason we have a Vassar's organization. Yep. And I say that with my oldest having had a reaction that was a Vassar's reaction. And it was frustrating because when I called that nurse hotline, oh, you're fine. Yeah, I'll let your doctor know, but it's fine. She should be crying. Yeah, babies cry after shots. And this was like 6-7 hours of crying. I thought, no, something's just not right. Wow. Sure enough, when I saw the doctor a couple days later, he said, that's a reaction that needs to be reported. Thank you for telling me because no one wrote it down in her chart when you called. And so, and he was honest with me. He said, look, I feel this is a vaccine that's really important. Let's try it one more time. And if she has this same reaction or any reaction the next time, we're not doing it again. And I appreciated that because how many doctors out there will just do it. Yeah, that reactions are fine. Don't worry about it. I'd rather the kid have a swollen brain for a few hours than the worst case scenario. Yeah. And so seeing her experience, and we paced them out because I thought, you know what? She was a preemie. She was super little. She's still super skinny. And I thought to myself, it doesn't make sense for me to give her 4 vaccines at the same time and then not know where the reaction is coming from. I'd rather do one at a time. And then I got a book, and it's called The Vaccine Friendly Guide, because I wanted to be educated. I wanted to have more of an understanding. And it's written by a doctor, a medical doctor, with other medical doctors and pediatricians that have contributed. And he talks about, here's why I don't think you need this vaccine. Wow. Or here's why I think you can hold off on this. Or here's why I think you can delay this. And so it made me feel empowered to not just trust my gut, like, this is a little itty bitty baby. I don't want to give them all at once. Yeah, yeah. Right? To also, well, I'm not around people that use drugs and needles, and, I'm always around our daughters. So it's not like certain incidences would occur that would necessitate a certain vaccine at 2 months or 3 years of age, right? Yeah, yeah. As opposed to, maybe not. I'm not discounting it. As they get older, I might want to give them that because I don't know what's going to happen to them. And if I can prevent hepatitis, okay, I'm open to that. But I do think there needs to be education on both sides, because regardless of what you choose as a parent, if you're not confident in your choice and the worst case scenario happens, how are you going to feel? Yeah, true. Right? So my perspective is, if you choose to vaccinate, that's fine. That's your decision as a parent. I respect your role as a parent. However, do you know all the possible reactions? Do you know all the possible risks? Are you open to learning them so that if and when one should happen, because statistically it can happen.
Yeah.
And just because it's your baby doesn't mean your baby falls outside of statistics.
True.
It can happen. How are you going to feel? And conversely, right?
Yes.
If you choose not to vaccinate or to partial vaccinate, and the worst case happens, how are you going to feel?
Mhm.
And if you can be fine with that, then go forward. That's your intuition. That's trusting in yourself and having faith to move forward. So that's why I say it's complicated, because, you know, on the one hand, I had, what's that one? Whooping cough in my 20s. And it was bad. I had it for 6 months and I thought I was going to die. Like, I would cough to the point of vomiting.
Oh, wow.
And so I thought to myself, okay, but no one had told me you needed to get a booster in your 20s, right? And so I thought, that for sure I will give my child, because I remember how I felt when I got it in my 20s.
Okay.
And because I'd had that experience, I thought, okay, I don't want to risk that.
Yeah.
That for me was a no-brainer, right? But again, like the hepatitis one, I thought, okay. Again, you read the science behind it, you read the history as to why it was implemented as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, okay, I don't need that right now. So that book, The Vaccine Friendly Guide, was really a precursor for me to trusting more of my intuition when it came to my little girls with doctors, but also doing more research.
Okay.
And yeah.
And
So I don't know if that like helps, but
it helps, Danielle, on so many levels, because I was pro-vaccine, and as you're aware of now, we're ex-vaxxers and pro-truth, you know, what
yes.
I view as the truth.
Yes.
And I see it no other way. We will not do any more vaccines ever again.
Yeah.
But hearing your perspective, it is always about your experiences and your perspective.
Yeah.
But the thing is, we're starting to lose that freedom to choose. Like, for you to say, I'm going to pick this vaccine and that vaccine because this is how I feel as a parent from my experiences. And I'm saying, we're not doing any vaccines.
Yeah.
From my experience.
Yes.
And now they're taking that away from us.
And I think too, part of the problem is, so my oldest has a mild allergy to egg whites.
Okay.
And for me, because I like to think of, well, what are the possibilities here, right? Like that scientific curiosity. I thought, well, how do I know it wasn't that allergy that created the reaction when she was 2 months old?
Yep.
Right? And because there's so little, you don't always know the makeup of your child. So, you know, and we've met other relatives that had very extreme allergies, including eggs. Well, if there's egg whites in almost all the vaccines or in certain vaccines, you're not going to give it to them. But how do you know that until you've tested? And most of them don't test unless there's like GERD or some sort of reflux going on, to test the blood for food allergies, right? That happened with us, with both girls. And sometimes those tests don't happen until they're 1-2 years of age. And then you think, well, could there have possibly been some damage here from injecting things into this little body that had an issue or a sensitivity or an allergy, and the body isn't able to metabolize it and process it? I mean, it's questions to be open to asking and not shutting it down, right?
Yes.
It's about having this conversation, this very open conversation about, does this work for everyone? How can we figure out if it works for people? Or is it just luck of the draw, right? Just statistically 5% or 1% might die and 5% might have, like, I don't know. But it's being open to that conversation and saying, I hear you. I understand your experience and why you're leery. Totally get it. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for that, because I need to hear a perspective like that for my own personal evolution. Again, because for me, it's black and white. And for you, it seems gray. And
I live in the gray a lot. I realize that.
and that's fine. And not everybody has to have the same perspectives or the same truths. And it's great when we can have the freedom to pick and choose how we want to treat our children and ourselves going forward.
Yeah. And just being able to respect each other and not disparage or disrespect or be cruel or mean because someone chooses something differently. Because at the end of the day, that doesn't keep the conversation going.
No.
And it makes us want to keep stronger on what we believe, right? And I told people, if I'm wrong, I'm okay being wrong if I'm learning more. But if you can't prove to me why I'm wrong, then let's just keep the dialogue open until new facts, new evidence is forward, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, like you said, being open to learning and realizing, yes, I'm wrong. Okay, let's move on. There's a newer truth. My truth has been updated.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, for me, what bothers me is when I meet very pro-vaccine people that don't even want to acknowledge vaxxers. Like, there's a reason it's there, right?
It's in place, yeah.
If there's a reason it's in place, and we have to be honest about it. Like, there's a reason. So if you want to do what you're doing, okay, but your child one day could need the funds that comes out of vaxxers because of a reaction. Yeah. So let's be open to keeping that gate open so we can talk about that. Is there a way that we can reduce the reactions? Is there a way that we can reformulate some of these vaccines so that they're not creating a problem in a certain group of the population, right? Mm-hmm. It's just talking about it. Yeah. Or maybe it's just, or you don't do it and you trust yourself and you trust your family. You trust, hey, we support our immune system. Yeah, there are germs all around us, but we're healthy and we're fine.
Yeah, we're good. We're good to go.
Yeah.
So Danielle, I have another question regarding your intuition and your channeling and your psychic tendencies.
Yes.
How do you feel about dreams?
Oh, dreams. Oh. So, I remember I would have the worst nightmares on a super full stomach. So and it didn't always have to do with everything going on around me. It was just all this stuff. So I remember telling myself, I believe in dreams. Absolutely. I believe there's a reason why we remember them, or there's a reason why we forget them. And it may not necessarily be because your brain didn't go into a certain cycle and you just don't remember it. I think dreams can be ways of warning us or shedding light on situations. It is a way for our brain to process all the information we've collected throughout the day. So I think it's a way for us to listen to certain data and information around us that maybe we didn't pay attention to while we were awake. Mm-hmm. So it comes through at night. Yeah, I love dreams. I think there are symbols and signs within dreams, whether it's for the present, processing something in the past, or telling us something in the future.
Yep.
And the more open you are to it, you can start to see, are there patterns coming about? Like, I remember as a kid having dreams the night before certain horrific train crashes or natural disasters would happen. Wow. And I would wake up in a panic. Mommy, I had this dream. And she like, yeah, I know. I'm watching it on the TV right now.
Oh my Lord. Yeah.
And so, and a big part of that was being open to it, because I was so scared. There was a part of me that shut it out. I'm like, nope. And even to this day, part of me is like, I don't know that I want to know.
Yeah.
I kind of suppress it. But dreams are beautiful. Dreams have a great way of, like I said, helping our brain process things, but then also giving us signs or warnings and things to pay attention to, what's going on in our life or what's going to be happening soon in our life.
Have you ever had dreams about any of your clients?
Oh, that's a good one. I can't remember any, but yeah, I don't think so.
No.
I start getting, like, the minute a client books a session with me or says, I want to work with you, I immediately start receiving messages. And I start writing them down. So I feel like maybe because I do that, it doesn't come into the dream so much.
Gotcha.
Plus nowadays with the way I sleep, again, I'm still breastfeeding and she still wakes up throughout the night. Maybe spirit has decided that's not a great way to communicate with her. She's probably not going to remember.
For sure.
She's not getting enough sleep as is. No, with clients, I just start receiving it as soon as they start, like, opening and giving me, like, an open access. Then it's, like, coming through and I write things down. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Good. So Danielle, do you have anything else that you would like to add to our interview today for our viewers before we sign out?
I think, so for me, the biggest thing that I come across is people wanting to change or wanting to heal certain parts of their life, whether it's physical or mental or, spiritual. And it's realizing that it can take work and you have to stay committed to it, because we've become comfortable with however we've been with these patterns for so many years. That changing them can be tough. So again, staying open-minded and resolute on what your goal is really important to the healing journey. Because I've seen that where people are like, oh, I want to do that. But then you tell them, well, here are suggestions. Oh, I don't want to do that.
Never mind.
Never mind.
Can't do that one.
Right. And so then it's realizing, well, again, reflecting back to yourself, why do I want to learn about intuition? Why do I want to learn about the chakras? Why do I want to heal myself? Right. And if you can tap into that hidden or deeper knowing within yourself, then everything else becomes easier. It's like, yeah, I don't need to have and I tell myself like, oh, I don't need to have that dairy. I know what that's going to do. It doesn't sustain, it's not helpful to my ultimate goal.
Yeah.
And so that's the big thing, is just being open and self-aware, because the more aware you are, the more then you can be authentic and genuine out into the world. And it gives people that freedom to feel like they can tap into themselves and be more authentic and genuine with you. And that's how we heal the world.
Danielle, thank you so much. It has been such a pleasure to spend time with you.
This was great.
This
was really special.
Okay, so if anybody wants to get in touch with Danielle, how can they do that?
They can email me at danielle@divineradiantliving.com, or go to my website, which is divineradiantliving.com, or message me on Facebook or on Instagram through the Divine Radiant Living handle or username, and I respond as quickly as I can, given life and kids and balancing it all.
Perfect. Thank you again, Danielle.
Thank you. This was wonderful. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you too.
Thank you.
Okay, take care. Bye, everybody.